All right, Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We are up to Amiyatza Hashem. Today is Daf Yod Beis, but we start from Daf Yod Aleph where we ended yesterday. Actually, it was an abrupt stop because we ended in the middle of a story. What was the story we ended in the middle of yesterday? We ended in the middle of a story where the Romans had a very interesting holiday. They had two people, one strong warrior type of guy, a Hercules, which represented Esav, and then they had a Yaakov, somebody who was limping.
Every 70 years.
On top of, every 70 years, like Chaim is saying. So you have this very interesting holiday celebrating the Gullus. That was the representation, 70 years, because we're still in Gullus. So Gemara says, and they would make these proclamations, declarations, announcements, how Yaakov is the one who's the trickster. Yaakov tricked Esav, their master. Yaakov is the brother of their master, who is the trickster. That's one of the statements they would make. So Amar Rav Ashi, if you take a look in the middle of the Amud, a little bit before the middle of the Amud, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, Amar Rav Ashi says, "Ichshilon piyam l'rishayim." It's amazing the way they expressed it. If you go to Yud Aleph Amud Beis, the way they express it, the way the phraseology of their expression actually indicates that Esav is the trickster, not Yaakov. Ichshilon piyam l'rishayim, Rav Ashi says. Amru, had they said Zaifana Achua Demarana, if they would have phrased it in a way where they said Zaifana Achua Demarana, Zaifana is separate from Marana. In other words, the Achua is in the middle, Kedeka Amri. Then, taka like you're saying, that then it would refer to Yaakov as the Zaifana. Zaifana Achua Demarana, because Marana, which is Esav, is on the other end of Zaifana, is separate. Hashta the Amra, but now they're saying Achua de Marana Zaifana, right? So now that they phrase it this way, you should know Marana Gufai Zaifanahu. Now you can interpret that statement as Esav the Marana, the Maran, which is their master. He himself is Zaifan. He himself is the trickster. So the way they phrased it is on them. In other words, it reflects back on Esav being the trickster, not Yaakov. That's what Rav Ashi is saying. Echshilon piyam l'rishayim. They said exactly the same nusach. Just like we make a bracha and birchas hachama, the same bracha. Yeah, every 27, 28 years? So they had this nusach. They had in the archives over there every 70 years. They take out the nusach and the ceremony, and they have they chazer it over. The chazan. Yeah, I mean, it's probably a new chazan every time. V'tana didon, my time if this is really a holiday every 70 years, why didn't the Tana mention it? Our Mishnah mentions a bunch of different holidays in Rome. Kalandas, Tarnura, right? We had all these names. Why doesn't it mention this one? So the Gemara says, no, if it's a yearly holiday, it's an annual festival, that the Tana mentions. But here, the less of it's once every 70 years, the Tana is not going to go mention every holiday that occurs once in every 7 decades, huh? Like Yovel, yeah, beautiful. Like Yovel, Moshe says, exactly. That's once every 50 years. Lahavdol $5. Zig the Gemara, Hani Droimoi. Now the Gemara is going to explain. Okay, I don't know what these names mean, but the Gemara in the Gemara's times, these were actual holidays like we have New Year's, Kratzmach, what other Easter. You have all these holidays today. So you had holidays back then, which was popular amongst the Romans. These Romans, these are the Roman holidays that the Mishnah mentions. What about the Persian holidays, right? Persia was another empire, and they had their own holidays. What were their holidays? Okay, those are the names of their holidays. So the Gemara says, now I know the Persian and the Romans. The Bavloimai, what about the Babylonians? Where it says they have different names. They have different holidays called Maranaiki, Vaknisa, Bachanune, Vese, Ba'adar. The 10th of Adar. Yeah, they had the holiday on the 10th of Adar. What did that represent? Here, on the bottom, what does it say? Look, I mean, over here, the Meiri says all these holidays are non-existent today, okay? These are just in the ancient times. The Gemara just mentions it. But you could... the 10th of Adar is one of our months. Right.
The Persian route. Remember what Saul said?
Oh, it's a Persian name.
He said they're all Persian names.
Ah, interesting.
So they also have a month called Adar?
Persian names.
Or, I see over here on the bottom, he says...
Yeah, they're from Persia. We get them from Persian.
So they have no Adar and we have no Adar.
There's an Adar.
They called it Isri Fadar. Isri Fadar on the bottom, they say. In other words, it's Eser Ba'adar, Isri Fa'adar.
No, they do.
They also have.
We have a lot of
All
people.
the same months. That's what Shaul was saying yesterday.
So
The
the
entire.
Persians have the same the calendar like the
Yeah.
Israel.
So today it's not
The same
Negaya,
month.
right? It's not relevant anymore.
I mean the names.
It's non-existent. That's
I
what they're
think
saying.
so. That's what he was saying.
I'm just wondering, like, what
I
happened?
mean, you have
That's what
people.
he's saying.
You have
I'm
people
just saying
speak
what he
Persian
said.
today. No, people. A lot of people speak Persian today. Farsi, right? Farsi is Persian. Yeah, people speak. Yeah. So anyway, on the bottom he says that in the Persian Empire it was known as Isri Fadar. Isri Fadar. That's how you said it. Esri Ba'adar. That was the holiday. Omer Rav Chana bar Rav Chizda Marav. Omer lo Omer Rav Chana bar Rav Marav. Chamisha bote avodas kechavim kvuanein. There are 5 churches, 5 places of worship that you should know that it's usher. It's usher to do business with any of them who are associated with those churches. Why? Because kvuan, and the Gemara is going to say, because those churches have a holiday every day. Yeah, they celebrate every day. Another, they're serving their idols every single day. So Mamela, it's a festival every day, so you can't do business
You
with
should
them.
never be able to do business.
But never, exactly.
No, I'm saying even because they might happen to praise them.
Right. So, so anybody who's associated with that,
No,
with
not
that,
not people who are even associated. Anybody,
what do you mean anybody?
because they might start praising their God.
Anybody, because if they're not associated, they're not going to be able to. They're not going to go there.
Oh, the ones who have holidays, they're still associated, but they don't have the holidays every
What if
single
you don't
day.
know if a
But
guy
they still
is-
might think they're gods. Why is that?
Meaning in their home, even if they're not associated with
Yeah.
the church itself.
Yes.
Okay, it's a
That's
good
not what
question.
Mishnah's saying. Mishnah's not saying that. Mishnah says there are fixed days that are accepted holidays. by
Why
the
the fixed days? Because we assume those are the days they're gonna be praising their God.
So we don't have to be cautious that.
Why not?
No, because, like, if
Because
you...
then we wouldn't be able to do business at all with Goyim.
That's what you can't do business at all with these guys.
Okay,
There's
these-
5,
this
there's
is
only
just
5.
One select group of Goyim. It's not all the Goyim. It's these Goyim who go to this church.
Although, because if
But
you, like...
every single Goy doesn't go. They're not. They have different.
I guess you have to be a member of that church to have the Isser, to have the real chashash. Because normally people don't celebrate a
Because
festival
if
every day.
they do a festival every day, they probably, like, if something happens to them, they don't think it's because of their God. They just think it's because...
They like the party. They're alcoholics.
Right,
Yeah.
they know.
They're
It's just that
Avodah Zarah.
if they keep on going, like,
Uh-huh.
they don't think every day, like, oh, thank for this. Like,
Yeah. Okay, so let's see what he says. Chamisha bot Avodah Kavim Kvuanein. Okay, you ready for these names? Never heard of them. You never hear them again until you learn Avodah Zarah again. Eloin, Beis Baal, Bavel. In Bavel it's Beis Baal, Beis Nevoi, Bekursi, Tirasa Shabamapak, Tzrifa Shabashkelon, Nishre Shabaravia. In other words, these are different countries, and Chazal are outlining the different places and the different names of the churches. Ki Asr Avdim Omar, Sifa Alein, Yurich Bein Bechi. Nidbocha Shabaakim, 2 more. Ikadam Nizbora Shabaakar. Avdim Adon Masni Ibcha, Yurich Shabaakim, Nidbocha Bein Bechi. Switched on the names. But either way, it's obviously non-existent today. But in those days, you had to know this list. It's like, you have a kashrus list on Star K. So you had a Avodah Zarah list for Jews. Like you went to the website, like which places and what names of which churches should you be aware of not to do business with those members. What does it mean? This is what the father of your mother said. The whole year, every single day, they have another holiday, they have another festival, and they serve this Avodah Zarah. Omar Shmuel Bagoyla. Now I want you to remember this Gemara. Shmuel says that outside of Eretz Yisrael, Einoi Aser El Yom Edom Bavad. Even though the Mishnah says that 3 days before the festival, you're already not allowed to do business with them because whatever they buy from you, they might be makrif to their Avodah Zarahs, or even if you don't sell them an animal for hakrava, still if they earn a profit, they might thank their Avodah Zarahs. But you should know in Chutz La'aretz, they're not as attached to their religion. They're more liberal. So Mamela, it's only they're not as from.
What difference?
Chutz La'aretz, I guess, that's the culture. The culture outside of Eretz Yisrael with Goyim, they're not as attached to Avodah Chavim, and therefore it's only usher on the holiday, the festival itself, to do business with them, not 3 days before. After the Chacham hold, it's never usher because the festival passed. So it's only leading up to the festival. They're going to serve their Avodah Zarah. That's when they're going to thank their Avodah Zarah.
You would think them after for giving them after.
But after the
Good
festival is
business.
over, so there's no official ceremony to serve the Avodah Zarah after the holiday. The Yom Edom Nami Mi Asr asks the Gemara, Yom Edom, is it really Asr the holiday itself? Or Rav Yehuda Sharla, the Rav Bruni La Zabuni Chamra, or Rav Gid La Zabuni Chitim B'Chag Setaya? Yeah? He says, even on the holiday itself, they allowed you to do business with wine merchants and with people who sell chitin, right, wheat. Says the Gemara, Shani Chak Setayad Lo Kvia. No, they're not so. I guess people who travel, right? Taya are the people who are merchants. They travel. They're not as careful to celebrate the holiday and serve the Avodah Zarah on that exact day. So Mamela, therefore, it's mutter. It's mutter even on the holiday to do business with those guys. Okay, you literally Gabe, Isaac, you came just in time. Just in time for this Mishnah. We're starting a Mishnah. It starts Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Beis, a new Mishnah, and Avodah Zarah. Today's Daf is Yud Beis. So we start from the bottom of Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Beis. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Shalom Aleichem Mo. Ir sheyesh ba avodas kechavim. You have a city that has Avodah Zarah, which means what? They have a specific day, a set day, that they celebrate their Avodah Zarahs. Yeah, you have a city, let's say July 4th. Yeah? Let's say you have a city July 4th, I pick a random date. Yeah, July 4th is a day where they go to the church and they serve Avodah Zarah. They celebrate, they serve Avodah Zarah. What happens? Let's say it's only in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Only in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, do they have, I just made it up. This is my Rebbe, my 10th grade Rebbe used to have this place, so like anytime he had to give an example, it's Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So that was the place where they served Avodah Zarah. So that was the city. What about Chutz Allah? What about the outside, the periphery, the outside of the city? Are we afraid that the people living on the outskirts of the city, are they going to go into the city and serve Avodah Zarah? Are you not allowed to do business with them either? Or no, you don't have to be afraid for that.
Your miklat, when they have the tchum and then the people outside, like the guards on the outside.
Yeah. In other words, that's the outside, the perimeter. Yeah.
Explain to them you can't do the 3 days before because they're going to use the money.
Because that's what we're talking about. You can't do business 3 days before the holiday. You know why? Because any business with a guy, who's he going to thank? Their Lord. Yeah, they're going to thank their Avodah Zarah. So therefore, and you are the one causing them to go and thank their idols. You don't want to be involved in that. You don't want to do that. So Chachamim said, refrain from giving a profit from interacting with them and doing business with them, so they don't go. You don't become the catalyst for them to go serve and thank their Avodah Zarah. So now, what if there's one city where everybody does Avodah Zarah, but outside they don't? Do you have to be afraid that since they're shchenim, they're neighbors, right? So maybe they'll go too. Says the Mishnah, chutz la mutter. No, outside is okay. That even if they live within the tchum of the city, it's okay. What about a chutz la beis kachavim? What about if the outside of the city people served Avodah Zarah on one day? So what about the city itself? So chutz la beis kachavim toicha mutter. In the city itself, it's mutter to do business with them. You don't have to be afraid they're going to go to the outskirts of the city and thank the Avodah Zarah. Mahu leilech l'sham. What about going on the day of the holiday itself, like for something else? Let's say the city celebrates July 4th as the day for Avodah Zarah, and you want to go to that city not because you want to do business. I guess you have a relative who lives there and you want to visit them. But people who watch you go to the city on that holiday, what are they going to think?
Doing business.
It's called Marasayan. What are they going to think? Doing business, or even worse, doing Avodah Zarah, right? So you get Marasayan. Marasayan. You know what Marasayan is? People are going to accuse you. Looks like you're doing something wrong. And it says that V'yisam Nikiyim Hashem Yisrael is a pasuk that you have to remain pure in the eyes of other people. Do your best to hold up your reputation. Okay, that's another question. Why do I have to be worried that somebody's going to accuse me? Why shouldn't they be worried about Nalakav Schus? Moshe is asking a good question. But either way, you have a chiyuv to make sure that you don't arouse the suspicion of other people on you that you're doing something wrong. So the Gemara says, what about, the Mishnah says, Ma'u leilech l'sham, you're allowed to go to a city that serves Avodah Zarah on the day of their holiday. Maybe people are going to accuse you of doing Avodah Zarah. So the Mishnah differentiates. Bizman shehad derech miyuchedes la'oser makam aser. If this derech, this road that leads to this city, doesn't have a thoroughfare, it's not like the city has a road on the other side that you can pass through, so people can think that you're just passing through to get through that highway. So if it's derech miyuchedes la'oser makam, there's no pass through that city. That's the dead end. So people are going to think, oh, that's where you're going. That's aser. But if it's just like a highway, like this city, the main road of the city just passes through to get to a different place, then it's mutter, then it's okay to go to that city, even though it's on the day of the Avodah Zarah, because people are not necessarily going to accuse you of going to the Avodah Zarah because it just serves as a highway to a different place. It says the Gemara, what is the case of chutzah? Okay, how far are we talking about? In other words, how close to the city do you have to be considered part of the city, and how far can you be considered outside of the city? You're not going to believe this. This is current events. Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, B'Shem B'Chanina, Kegoin, Atloiza Shel Ir, Gaza. Aza, somebody once said that Aza is really Gaza, because the ayin of Aza, the way it's pronounced in the Teimanim, who have the real Messiah and how to pronounce the letters, the Aza is always pronounced, the ayin is Gaza. That's where it gets the name Gaza from. But it's really Aza. Yeah? The Gaza Strip is really Aza. So the Gemara says that there used to be a market, a meat market, outside of Gaza, near the southern border of Israel, which is Gaza. And so what's chutzala? What's considered an area that's outside of a city but near a city? That's the example they gave. Whatever they lived in those times was the itlas, the meat market next to Gaza. That's the example. The ikad amri. Okay, we'll talk about Gaza in a moment. A very interesting conversation to have over here. What's the halacha when it comes to the meat market near Aza? Yeah, Aza does Avodah Zarah, but you are in the Atloiza. Do you have to be afraid not to do business? Do we have to be suspicious not to do business with them? Did you never go to Tzoyer in your life? Okay, so here we're going to get involved in a very interesting analogy. The Gemara says that just like when you go to the city of Tzoyer, right? So they used to shear ovens. The way they used to do, like not everybody had an oven, not everybody had a stovetop in their house. So the way they used to do it was they had different, like they had a big stove and they had different holes and the fire was underneath and everybody put their pot on top if they wanted to cook. It was like a community setting.
Like in the center of town.
The center of town. Everybody brought their pot, their cholent, whatever it was. So the goy brought his pork and the yid brought his cholent. So the halacha is that the guy's pork was allowed to be next to the yid's cholent. And the chachamim weren't afraid, as we'll see, that maybe the guy's going to put a piece of pork in your cholent. They weren't afraid that maybe the guy is going to light the fire. It's bishul akum. We'll see over there. So the Gemara says, just like we're not afraid that maybe the guy, right, you could be next to a goyish pot on the same stovetop and not be afraid that the guy is tampering with your pot, so too you don't have to be afraid if there's an area next to a city of Avodah Zarah and those people are going to go serve Avodah Zarah. You can do business with them as well. That's the Gemara's comparison to these two cases. Okay, but before we go weiter, the Gemara is going to really take this apart with these two pots over here. Before we get involved in the sugya of two pots, it's very relevant if people have housekeepers cooking for them. This is a very big sugya. But before we get involved in that, question is Aza, right? So some want to prove, there's a big conversation in the Poskim and the Achroinim, the Chazon Ish. They want to know, Gaza, is it part of Eretz Yisrael or not? Very relevant la halacha. Is Gaza, Aza, the Gaza Strip, is that part of Eretz Yisrael? In other words, let's say if you buy fruits from Gaza, is it mechuyev in Trumas HaMaasros? Trumas HaMaasros is only in Eretz Yisrael, right? Oh, Nathan, you came just in time for this conversation. This is very, very interesting. Yeah, Gaza. Is Gaza part of Eretz Yisrael? So the shaila is that maybe it's not. Why? Or maybe it is. Very interesting. From this Gemara, it seems like Gaza is part of Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because only in Eretz Yisrael is there an Isser to do 3 days before a holiday business. Shmuel said, if you live outside of Eretz Yisrael, Chutzlar, it's only on the holiday itself, not 3 days before. So here, the Gemara is a conversation about doing a business with Goyim 3 days before the holiday, right? If you live in a city or you live in an area outside a city in Eretz Yisrael. And what's the example? Gaza. So comes the Yavitz. The Yavitz says, wow, it's very clear that Gaza is part of Eretz Yisrael. Right? Because the Gemara is including this in the conversation when we're talking about doing business 3 days before the holiday, which is only relevant to a city in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. The Maharit says, no, it's not so pashut, because Shmuel, who said it's only usher to do business in Chutzlaretz on the holiday itself, not 3 days before, that's Bagoila in Chutzlaretz. But Gazi says it's not necessarily Eretz Yisrael, not necessarily, but it's not Goila either. It's like an area, a neighborhood that's in between Eretz Yisrael and Chutzlaretz. It's like neutral. It's neutral. I would say it has an identity crisis. Yeah, Carmelis. It's not sure. Carmelis, not ever say. Yeah, it's an in between area. And as you see in history, Gush Katif, Palestinians. Like it goes back and it goes back and forth. Like it's not clear. It's not very clear whether. That's why there's a big machlokes of Shainim and Achrayim whether Gaza is chelik of Eretz Yisrael. But here the big raya the Yavitz brings and other places want to bring is from this Gemara. Gemara includes it in the conversation of Eretz Yisrael. Gemara talks about doing business 3 days before a holiday, which is only relevant to Eretz Yisrael, the Isra of 3 days before. And yet the Gemara brings Gaza as an example when it talks about Chutzela, the neighborhood outside of a city Eretz Yisrael. So it must be Gaza is considered Eretz Yisrael.
Maybe
Very interesting.
Yeah. The meat market, the Jews also went to there, and so if you're using part of the city, then the entire city is considered part of it.
Where Gaza is considered part of Eretz Yisrael because they're
not physically.
Moshe, very interesting svara, Moshe. Wow, man, am I glad you're here. It's good. Okay, very interesting. Okay, Zeg the Gemara. Now we're going to talk about the two kderas, the two pots next to each other. If you have a pot of a goy and a pot of a yid next to each other, the halach is we're not afraid. Chachamim were not afraid for what? Says the Gemara. Amar Abaye, mishabasan avela. They weren't afraid for basan avela. What does that mean? Lo yamrina. We don't say dilma mahadir apei Yisrael achayir. Maybe when the Jew turns his back to his pot of cholent, then what's going to happen? Shadi avid chav nevela b'gder. The goy is going to put, when he doesn't look, he's going to put an avela in his pot. Yeah? So the chavasa chanami, so too, that's the comparison to the two cities, or the area outside the city. We weren't afraid that if you're doing business outside the city of, let's say, Gaza, where they do Avodah Zarah, so you can do business outside of the area outside the city, because we're not afraid that maybe the money that you get for selling your animal in that meat market is money that was designated for Avodah Zarah, and that's Issa Deraisa. You're not allowed to use that money. Once money was designated for Avodah Zarah, it says La Yidvak Biyat Chamum. It's a pasuk in the Torah. You're not allowed to benefit from it. So Mevela, we're not afraid. We're not afraid. Just like my two pots, the Chacham weren't afraid. We're not afraid for this either. By the way, so here's a very interesting Tosfos. I'm not going to read the whole Tosfos, but Tosfos over here says in the second Tosfos on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, Tosfos says that you see in this Gemara that you're not scared, we're not afraid, we're not suspicious that a non-Jew who is cooking right near your pot is going to put an avela, a piece of non-kosher meat, into your pot of cholent when you're not looking. Says Tosfos, Umahai Taima, Shavkina B'chol Yoim, Kidei Shalonu L'Shevchesenu Evdis Cham. Here's the source how a housekeeper is allowed to cook for you in your house. Why aren't you afraid every time? Yeah, you turn on the fire, all good. Yeah, you turn on the fire and there's no bishul akum, no problem. But once you do that, yeah, we have it all the time in my house. Yeah, we have, my wife leaves, I leave, and you have the non-Jewish housekeeper, right? So she, what? Oh, you need Yotzev Nichlas. That's also true. But Tosfos says, even without Yotzev Nichlas, you see over here that there's no fear, there's no suspicious. We're not suspicious that maybe the non-Jew is going to put an avela in your pot. So says this is the source why you can have non-Jewish housekeepers. Now the truth is, the Rosh, the Rashba, many Rishonim on this Tosfos, on this Gemara say, Yerei Shamayim, somebody who is afraid of an Aveira, and somebody who wants to go the extra step, absolutely should make sure that they don't leave the housekeeper by themselves. Like the doctor says, Yotzev Nichnas, make sure you come in and out, which is what we do, right? We'll come in and out. The housekeeper never knows when we're gonna come in. But certainly you shouldn't. The Pri Chadash, we paskin la halacha. The psak halacha is that it's certainly better. Certainly better if you have. By the way, if you have video cameras, I'm sure if you have video cameras, right, then maybe that could work.
That's acceptable.
That's acceptable, even though now with AI everything looks real. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much you could rely. Right, we spoke about this. That the Rav Yosef wanted to know, right, if you need to aid him, that a son is the son of his father with regard to Yerusha, if you can do a DNA test. Right, nowadays you can know, not through Adam. My mother is a stenographer, right? So she types every single word, right? And so she's a human being. She types every single word. But what if you have a tape recorder, right? You have a recording. Why isn't that, even though, my mom has a recorder inside her steno machine, just in case she misses a word. So even she relies on recording. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, you rely on technology. So is technology enough? Is a video enough? If you have a video camera watching the non-Jewish housekeeper cooking, is that enough to make sure for Yerei Shamayim, to be Yoitza, the level of Yerei Shamayim, like the Rosh says, like the Rashba says? Okay, that's a different conversation. But either way, from our Gemara, it's clear, like Tosfos says, you're not afraid if a housekeeper, a non-Jewish housekeeper, is going to stick a nevela into your pot of cholent. Okay. So the Gemara, Rava Amar, Rava says, that no, when we're comparing it to two pots, the two areas, the city of Avodah Zarah with the outside, the peripheral, the perimeter, the outside area, that doesn't do Avodah Zarah to the two pots, Rav Amar, no. What does it mean? The Chacham weren't suspicious? It's not referring that we're not suspicious of Nevela, which is the Isser D'Oraisa. We're not suspicious for Isser D'Rabbanan. Bishul Akum is the Isser D'Rabbanan. What's Bishul Akum? If you have the non-Jew cooking for you, right, so you'll see, if you have a helper at home, a non-Jewish helper, you always see that your parents make sure to make sure that they light the fire, they put the pot on the fire at least, or they stoke it, or they stir it, whatever. If you're Sfari Ashkenaz, we're not going to get involved in what you need to do to avoid Bishul Akum. But here, Rav is saying that the Chachamim were not suspicious if you have a goy spot next to a Yid's cholent, that they're going to come to be mavashal the cholent. So over here, we're not afraid for Isser D'Rabbanan. Right? If it's Mutter Manatayr, that's what we're not afraid. Rabbi Bar Ula Omar, he says, means Mishim Tzenoiro. No, it's even a farther Isser. It's like farther removed, far-fetched Isser. What does Tzenoiro mean? That it's something which, I guess, once the guy opens his pot of pork, sometimes you might have like a drop or like a piece fly out by mistake into the Jew's pot, which is really batal b'roiv, batal b'shishim. So really it's an Isser kal. So anyways, it's not such an Isser. Which means the 3 days before the holiday is only Isser Kal, just like that Isser Kal, and that's the comparison with regard to that Isser. But it's not to say that we're not afraid the guy's not going to put an Avela in there. That you can't prove from there that we're not afraid. It's only we're not afraid for an Isser Kal, a far-fetched Isser. That's really what the comparison is. That's the Shaila. Okay, so the Gemara. Ma'u leilech l'sham. We said that is a person allowed to go into a city that serves Avodah Zarah on the festival, on the day of the festival, right? If people are going to think that he's going to serve Avodah Zarah. Tanu Rabban, a city that is celebrating Avodah Zarah. They have a set holiday for Avodah Zarah. You're not allowed to l'katchila enter that city. And you can't even use it as a thoroughfare, as something that you're just passing by, as a passway, as a passageway, as a highway to get to a different city. That's Reb Meir's opinion. Chacham say no. As long as that city is a dead end, you can't move, you can't use that to get to a different place. Usr, that's usr. Because then people are going to suspect you. But if it's not, in other words, you can pass through, that's mutter. Gemara says, now, very interesting, now that once we mentioned Maris Ayin, that you're not allowed to go into a city that serves Avodah Zarah, according to Racham, if it's a dead end, because people are going to believe or think that you're doing Avodah Zarah, now we have a bunch of different examples of what you're not allowed to do, because it looks like you're doing something wrong. For example, Yoshav leikoitz b'fnei avodas kechavim. What if you got a splinter? Let's say you got a splinter at the bottom of your foot. You're walking, I guess they had sandals, whatever they had in those days, they didn't have good shoes. And splinters were common. So you got a splinter under your foot, and you got it right as you're standing in front of an Avodah Zarah. What do you want to do? You want to bend down to take the splinter out, yeah? Says the Gemara, Lo yishcha v'yitlena. Do not bend down if you're standing in front of Avodah Zarah and you have a splinter. You know why? Because it looks like you're serving Avodah Zarah, you're bowing to the Zarah.
Like tying your shoe. You gotta be
like
careful.
tying your shoe. You got to be careful what you're doing in the front. Same example, beautiful. I guess they didn't have the lace. I don't know.
We
Maybe
were in the Vatican. I had to tie my shoe, so I brought out my shoe.
Wow, we were in the Vatican. My sons and I, we went to Rome to do this film, which you're gonna hopefully see in 2 weeks. An incredible film. We made a film about the Vatican, the menorah in the Vatican. Unbelievable. Make sure ashkifa.com. Anyway, so the point is, shameless plug. Point is that we had to actually daven mincha. Remember we had to daven mincha? Remember it was like almost Shilas ki daven mincha in the Vatican. Oh my gosh, we had to leave the inside where all the statues, the Sistine Chapel. Even there it was so uncomfortable. Yeah, and to bow down, Baruch Ata Hashem. I was like, unbelievable. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do. But either way, the idea is that if you're standing in front of a getchka, in front of an idol, or in front of a church, right? Do not bow down. Shenira, I had this famous story with a woman. Rivka Rabbits. If you watch this video, right, she was in front of the Pope Francis, Yamach Shemai. So he had a I'm going to be banned. Yeah, he had a tzilum. He had a cross, and he wanted to shake. I guess she was the chief of staff to President Rivlin, president of Israel, and she was accompanying him on his trip to the Vatican.
So she has the shiur before she went.
So she did not shake the Pope's hand.
She has the shiur. There was some movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I interviewed her. I put her on a film. Yeah, and we did a film, and it received, 500,000 views. I'll tell you something. We had a lot of Catholics, Christians. I had to shut off the comments. Bekitzer, no, it was pretty antagonistic, because they said, "Oh, look how humble the Pope is. He bowed even though she was rude." But anyways, she stood by her values, and she didn't shake the Pope's hand. Why not? Because it's usher. First of all, Shem Nagia, and also the derech is to shake the Pope's hand and give a little bow. But he's wearing a tzelem. He's wearing a cross. So this is a big deal. The Gemara says,
Can you nod your head?
huh?
Can you nod your head?
So that's a good question. Could you nod your head? So if the nodding of the head is not the derech, the nodding the head is not the derech, the tzelem is more, you go a little higher than what's usual, so it's apparent that you're not doing it or whatever. It doesn't look like you're doing it for the tzelem. What? She was accompanying President Rivlin. She had a job. She had a very important job also. And she's she has like 12, 13 kids. I went to visit her. I was just in Israel a couple months ago. She texted me. She's like, "Can you come visit us?" Her husband is the mayor of Telstone. Yeah, the mayor of Telstone. He used to be the mayor of Beitar. Tremendous, just the most wonderful people in the world. Anyway, so incredible woman. Anyway, so she had this dilemma, sort of. Gemara over here says, do not bow down, even if you're trying to take out a splinter in front of Avodah Zarah. Shenira kemeshtach v'levedis. He looks like you are bowing to a getchka. Then einoi nira. Now, what does it mean einoi nira? What does it mean einoi nira? Gemara is going to say, what does it mean? It means nobody's watching. We'll see. Einoi nira mutter. What does that mean? We'll talk about it in a second. Nispazru loy ma'osav. What if you lost? I guess you dropped change. Bifnei Avodah Zarah, in front of Avodah Zarah, and you want to pick it up. Yeah, you want to pick it up. Beautiful coins. Yeah. Lo yish chavitlam. Don't bend down to pick up the $100 bills. You know why? It looks like you're bowing to Avodah Zarah. Then einoi nira. If it's not nira, we'll talk about it in a second what that means. Mutter, it's mutter. What if you have a stream of water and you're thirsty and you want to bend down? I guess what do you have? Like you have those
water fountain.
The water fountain, yeah, and you want to bend down, and it's mamish right in front of a tzelem.
What about
yeah?
the Nile?
By the way, the Nile. If it's in front, the Nile itself is Avodah Zarah. Ooh,
Good question.
it's a great question. Great question. Egypt, the Nile itself is Avodah Zarah. You bow down by definition. You're serving Avodah Zarah. So here's the question. By the,
Eating a sheep, they call it their god.
yeah, they call it God. Yeah, eating a sheep. So like you're like trying to even the shearing the wool. I don't know. Gets it. Very good. Isaac. Yeah.
Hit the water, you probably bent over.
Hitting what?
He probably didn't go that.
Right. Who knows? You know what's interesting? I was in Rome. We were in Rome. We went to the catacombs, right? The catacombs, so interesting, underground. We went to the Jewish catacombs, but there are millions of people buried in Rome. Beneath the streets of Rome, you have literally 4 stories deep of Jews who saw the Churban Beis HaMikdash. It's unbelievable. You see it all in the film. And, there are 6 Jewish catacombs in Rome and over 80, I think 80 non-Jewish catacombs. And when you walk into those catacombs, even if you're on a tour, right? So sometimes you have to bend your head down, and on the other side, there's a cross. Like as you go from one cave to the next. And they do it on purpose, because this way you have to bow down. Yeah. Yeah. So as a shiloh, if you're allowed to go through it. You're allowed to go through it? What's the, yeah. That's very good, yeah. What happened?
The doorway, I think, expanded, so he didn't have to bend down.
Oh, that's incredible.
Because he's 10 hours tall.
Yeah. So he didn't have to bend that. Okay, is that a medrash, doctor? Where is that? That's beautiful. Doctor was saying, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he had to go into Paro, they made the door, because he was also short, Paro. Wow, incredible. Yeah. Okay, so Mayna Moishech, again, a stream of water, Liyishcha, Biyishtat, Nishnir, Partsufos, what about, by the way, we have in front of our house, there's no shape of a person, right? By our water fountain we have in front of our house. It's like spitting out from the mouth.
There's no person.
Not a person, but sometimes you have, like these Buddhas. Yeah. You have from the mouth, it's like a stream of water coming out. Let's say a guy's thirsty, and he wants to drink from that statue. It looks like he's kissing the Avodah Zarah, yeah? Going to the mouth of the Avodah Zarah, it's like from its mouth. Says the Gemara. Partsufais, statues in the shape of people. Hamakalchen mayim, that stream water out of it. Lekrachen, right? And it goes to krachen. Lo yaniach pivel piam. Don't put your mouth on the statue's mouth. Vayishta, you know what? Even though they don't even serve, it's not the statue, it's not Avodah Zarah, but it looks like Avodah Zarah, and it looks like you're kissing Avodah Zarah. So kayotzeba, yolaniach pivel siloin. Don't put your mouth on a pipe of water. The pipe is connected to the ground. The yishta, that's a different reason. That's a kana, because who knows what's in that water? Yeah, not a water fountain. Over here, you're talking about the pipe itself is next to the. Huh? Yeah, even if it's filtered, it says?
No.
Leeches,
Leeches. Haluka's leeches, yeah. Bacteria, yeah, like stuff that can get you sick. It's dangerous.
Wait, just like a water pipe?
Stop, if it's mechuber to the karka, not a statue that's coming out of the water, like in the mouth. We're talking about a different case where it's literally attached to the ground, and you have all kinds of insects and rodents that get into that water. Make sure not to drink from that. Gemara is giving you good advice, yeah? Gemara says, "My einoi nireh." Now, what does it mean? In the first two cases, right, it says, first three cases, einoi nireh mutter. Right, we're talking about, let's say you have a splinter. It's also to bend down, or let's say your money dropped. It's also to bend down. But if it's einoi nireh mutter, what does it mean einoi nireh mutter? Says the Gemara,
Might look like you're giving it to him, like giving it to the idol.
if you mean that nobody is watching you, then it's mutter. Rav said, anytime it's asr because of maras ayin, let's say you're not allowed to do it because it looks like people will be suspicious you're doing something wrong. Once chacham asr min shemaras ayin, even if nobody's watching, it's asr. Doesn't matter. We're not differentiating. Right? So how can it say einoi nireh mutter if nobody's watching, it's mutter? Once chachamim said that if somebody would be watching, it'd be asr. Doesn't matter if people are there or not. Now it's asr. So what does it mean einoi nireh mutter? If you do it in a way where it doesn't look like you're bowing to Avodah Zarah, like Moshe said before, maybe you're kicking it, right? Maybe you kick it a little to the sideways, and then you're bowing to the side to pick it up, not in front of the Avodah Zarah, so it doesn't look like you're bowing to the Avodah Zarah, then it's mutter. Now the Gemara wants to know, why do we say three different cases? We're talking about a splinter, we're talking about money, and we're talking about a guy who wants to drink from a stream of water in front of Avodah Zarah. Why do we need all these three cases? Gemara says the chiddush by each one. Let's read them. The itana kites, if you just would tell me a splinter, I would have said, Mishim the efshel amezel kamei mishkalei. You know why it's usher by a splinter? Because you can easily walk a few steps ahead of the Avodah Zarah and take it out over there. So Chachamim said, don't do it in front of the Avodah Zarah. You can easily move away and then take out the splinter. But what about money? Aval mois, the loyafshir, you have 100 coins scattered all over the place. So here, you can't just move over a couple of steps and pick it up. You have to pick it up right here. So maybe Eimaloy, maybe Chachamim didn't aser to pick it up here. So therefore the Chacham said, even money where it's not so simple, you have to do it here, it's also aser. V'itanamois, and if it just would have said money, I would have said the Mamayna. Maybe it's only because it's money, yeah? Money is money. My father always says, money comes, money goes, the love is always there. Money is just money. Yeah, money comes, money goes. Aval kites, but a splinter, the tzara, it's painful, it's goof, it's your body. So maybe the Chacham would be matter it. Ema loy, maybe the Chacham didn't answer it. So therefore it says both of these cases. V'itana hani tarti, if it just would have said a splinter and money, I would have said, you know why Chacham said, don't do it here in front of the Avodah Zarah? There's no danger. There's no danger. So, okay, so you're not going to pick up your money. Or you can walk a few steps ahead. Avamayin, but let's say a guy's mamish thirsty. He feels like he's going to die. Yeah? So mamish thirsty. The ikasakana, if he doesn't drink right now, he's mamish going to die. Loishasim mayas. It's an unbelievable chiddush. Even if you're going to die, this is, it's hard to wrap our brains around this. Yeah, because you're so thirsty. Emaloi. Maybe Chachamim didn't aser over here. Maybe over here it's mutter. Says tzricha. That's why the Bryce says, even if death is involved, there's a risk of you dying, do not do it. Now the question, of course, is, what do you mean? It's only the Rabbanan. I'm not serving Avodah Zarah. It only looks like I'm serving Avodah Zarah.
Why don't you just cup your hands?
And take it, Rabbi Gold?
Cup your hands, drink.
But you have to bow down to cup your hands, no?
You're not going like mouth to mouth.
Aha. No, the mouth to mouth is a different one. But here, so here the Gemara says that even if it's a Isser D'Rabban of Maris Ayin, it's unbelievable. Chachamim said, rather die, because Avodah Zarah is one of the Gimel Chamuris. What are the three cardinal sins, you know? One is killing, Shvichas Damim. The other is adultery, Arayas. And the third is Avodah Zarah. So here we're proving that it's not just, the whole Sugya in Sanhedrin we learned a couple of Masechtas ago, that it's not just the Isser of Avodah Zarah, the Araysa itself. Anything that's a part of it, even a D'Rabbanan, it's also included in the Yarg V'Yavar. It's a big chiddush, big chiddush. It's not so simple, but anyway, this is what the Gemara holds over here. It seems like. Now the Gemara says Partzufas Lamali. What about Partzufas? What about the case of statues? Over there, you're not even serving it. The statue itself is not even Avodah Zarah. You just want to drink from the mouth. It looks like you're kissing it. So why does it have to say that case? That case is only right once it's asur. Even if you're going to die, it's asur. So obviously you're not allowed to do it when you partzufais. Gemara says, no, the chiddush is the seifa of that you shouldn't put your mouth next to a pipe on the ground because of sakana, my sakana aluka, because of leeches, because of insects that might get into the water. So you got to be careful. What are you saying, Moshe?
Why don't you move away? If you don't want to look like you're kissing it, why don't you move away?
If you don't want to look like you're kissing and move away a little bit from the statue.
No, like if it's like
Like lie down. Okay, that could be an idea. That could be a good idea, Moshe. Very good. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara Vaiter. Yeah, Tanu Rabbanan. Lo yishta odom mayim. Do not drink. Lo min amaharas, v'lo min agamim. You're on a hike. You see a stream of water. Right? You see a river. You see a mayim. Do not drink from there. Lo befiv, not from your mouth directly. Put your mouth in the stream. V'lo be yodei achas. Or even if you go with, like you put the water, like you let it stream in your hand, and you put the water there. V'im shasa. And if you drink from there, you should know damai beroishai. Something happens to you, you know you're responsible for your own life. If you die from that, you are responsible for killing yourself. Because you have to assume
It's not mayan out of the ground or in the ground?
in the ground itself. Hanaharis and agama. My sakana saluka. Yeah, you have insect. You have these leeches that you might swallow, and if you swallow one of those, hay vavai.
What's up with like a well?
Yeah.
I have down.
Yeah.
It's just collecting water.
It could be a well. It could be a well is different. It could be a well is coming. Yeah, it could be a well is not exposed.
Once it leaves the ground.
Once it's Naharis, if it's a river, it's exposed to all kinds of stuff.
Standing water, you don't want to touch.
Yeah, exactly. So Gemara says. So in other words, be afraid for your life. The Gemara says, don't just drink, water from like a stream or a nahar or a river, even if it's with your hand and you're cupping it into your hand first.
A river, an exposed river.
An exposed river. Masiyeh Reb Chanina. This is a right Reb Chanina. The Reb Chanina, the Heilig Reb Chanina said, "Abulei nima shel mayim." Somebody who swallows, oh my gosh, a leech in the water from water. Mutter lahacham lechama b'Shabbos. You're allowed to be mechal Shabbos for him. You should know his life is in danger. You're allowed to literally burn a fire, get some hot water. I guess hot water is good for that. And you're allowed to warn up. Why? Because it's mamash sakanas nefesh, it's pekuach nefesh. On Maisa, there's a story. Be'echad shabol l'nei mishal mayim, nimishal mayim v'hitter b'nechemyu lahacham lechama b'Shabbos. Rechemyu says, go be mechal Shabbos quickly, because you never know, because you could die. Adach v'acham Ravuna Rabbi Yeshua lig mechala. By the way, until the water got hot, Rabbi Yeshua advised, let him swallow some vinegar. Go to your fridge. If you have vinegar is going to slow down the death until the water gets ready, and the hot water will save his life. But until the hot water gets ready, let him get some vinegar. I guess vinegar is an antidote. Huh? Yeah, drinking hot water, I guess, counters the danger of swallowing a leech. But until the hot water gets ready, Mechal Shabbos, still get some vinegar if you can, to delay the death, so you can be saved with hot water. Somebody who swallows a bee. Interesting. Somebody who swallows a bee. You should know it's dangerous. He's not going to live. Okay.
Alive or dead?
I'm not sure. Doesn't say. Mihu. Gemara says over here. It's unbelievable. Gemara says, Mihu. Lashke reviyasa dechal shamgez. Drink some strong vinegar after you swallow a bee. You should know you're going to die. Gemara says you're going to drop dead. You're going to KTB, kick the bucket. What should you do to delay the death? so you could say goodbye to your family. Make sure drink some hard vinegar. Drink some strong vinegar. So this way you'll extend, right? You'll have a couple extra minutes before you die. This way you'll be able to say goodbye and tell your family, give your family your last will and testament, which is really interesting.
What if it's on Shabbos? Are you able to write it then?
What is that?
If it's on Shabbos, are you able to write your will?
Oh, that's it. You could just say it. No, you can't write your will. You could say it. There's just like you have an extra couple of minutes to say it, which is why. Huh?
What if somebody
You swallowed it. Which is, by the way, the Tzitz Eliezer is a big shaila. I remember my Babi, when she passed away, she was in the hospital, and they kept feeding her. They kept literally feeding her. She was unconscious. She was in a coma, and she was as good as gone. Okay, she was a geisis, and they kept her alive by feeding her whatever medicines through the IV. Yeah, they did, and there's a big fight in the family. Yeah, my sister is a doctor. She's like there was a big fight in the family. Should you continue feeding the IV tube or let her die? Yeah, big question. Big question. So they want to bring a raya from this Gemara. The Gemara says, it's very interesting. The Gemara says, you know why you should give vinegar to extend life? So this way you could say goodbye to the family. Really? That's the only reason? The reason is so you could say goodbye? The reason is because if you can extend life, extend life. It's a mitzvah of a chai be'em. Every minute of life is precious. You say goodbye to your family, not goodbye. What if the family members are not there? Yeah. So that's not relevant? This advice is not relevant? Why would the Gemara hinge it upon saying goodbye to your family? If it's a mitzvah to extend life, knowing that the person is going to die, but you can extend a person's life, is there a mitzvah to extend a person's life when you know he's for sure going to die or not? So here you have a raya l'chayr that it's mutter. That you don't have to extend. A person is a geis is on their deathbed, you can let them die. Avada, you're not allowed to kill them. If you kill them, but you're not allowed, you have to let them. You can let them die. Why? Because the Gemara says the only reason why you should give them vinegar is to extend their life. For what reason? To say goodbye. Why? That's the reason. If there's a mitzvah, if there's a chiyuv to extend a person's life, because every minute in this world is precious, so why shouldn't you extend a person's life and give them vinegar? Stam, even if the family members are not there. So here you have a raya that somebody's a goisis, and this is obviously only true for a goisis. Somebody, doctors are saying they're on their deathbed. Yeah, they're not gonna. This is they're kroivin lemisa. Yeah, if you've ever been by a sick person's bed, and they're literally by yitzis neshama, so they're in a different. They have a different halachic. They have a different halachic status, because they're not considered, according to many halachas, they're not considered fully alive. To the point where in this Gemara it's mashma, there's no mitzvah to extend their life unnecessarily. Unless you want to do them a favor and they want to say goodbye to their family members, then give them some vinegar. But other than that, there's l'chayra. This is l'chayra. I'm just saying, I'm not a halach, I'm not paskening halacha there. I'm just, because we're learning Daf Yomi, so I'm just pointing out in this Gemara, that's what the Tzitz Eliezer, another place can want to bring a raya from this Gemara. Tanu Rabban, L'yishta adamayim b'layla. Don't drink water at night. Now, I'm not sure exactly what this means.
You could pee the bed.
V'im shasa, damay b'roishav nesakana. You should know, be afraid for your life.
At night, you don't see what you're drinking.
What is that?
It says
You
here,
don't see.
from rivers and ponds.
You can't see what you're drinking, so it might be some.
It's the same as drinking.
Okay, thank you, doctor. So now we have lights, it's not relevant. Okay.
Also, the uncovered stuff.
You
at
had
night
fire
also-
then.
You had fire too, right? That's also
I mean, there
interesting.
wasn't a problem not seeing at
More
night.
likely than not.
So Chaim's standing good.
It says because it inflicts blindness.
Huh?
It says because it inflicts blindness.
Okay, what does it say more? If blindness, that's
It says
just
Shavrire is the name of the demon in appointed to
demon. Oh, there are demons at night.
Shade him.
So this is like a heebie-jeebie stuff. It's not stop because we're afraid of.
It's an uncovered glass, right? And
Yeah.
and the snake could come and put its fangs inside.
That's different. The snake is different, but this is
But this
demons.
all the demons. The demons
What
are
if it's like a closed bottle?
an uncovered
Right. What if it's a closed bottle? That would make a difference. What if it's a closed bottle?
It's, what-
Excellent question, Isaac, because that would make a difference.
Poskim don't say.
Right.
Poskim say today we don't be afraid of my mom.
So the Gemara says. Oh, 1 second. The Gemara says, "My sakana, what's the danger of drinking?" Okay, it was just another line of the Gemara. Sorry. My sakana, what's the danger of drinking water at night? Sakana shavrire. We're afraid that the demon who is in charge of making people blind is going to blind the person who drinks at night.
why?
What if he's thirsty? What should he do? So you should have another person present. If you have another person present, so you should wake him up in the middle of the night and say, I'm thirsty and I want to drink water. So the demon, doesn't have power if there's another person present. The Eloi, and if you don't have another person, you had to use your alarm clock. Make noise. Yeah, make noise as if there's another person present. And speak loudly. And say to yourself, Planya bar planisa amr lach imach is dar mishavir bria rira yirei rei b'chos chivre. Whatever that means. In other words, pretend there's another person present to scare away the demon. This way, he doesn't make a person blind. Okay, we'll stop over here.
You have to get the blood to marry.